morning, everybody. Well, at least it's morning in my kitchen. And welcome back to Bethy Marie. Today I'm going to be making something that's a little bit more of a breakfast dish, and it is something I think you're going to love. These are called cinnamon squares. They're akin to a cinnamon roll with all of the same components, but they look a little bit different, but I'm sure they still taste good. So let's go ahead and let me introduce my cooking partner here today. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Susanna. This is Susanna. What are we making today, Susanna?
Cookies.
Cookies. Susanna's making cookies. I'm going to let her do her own thing over here while I do some work over here. And without further ado, let's get started. So for cinnamon squares, we are going to need a large bowl. You can use a stand mixer as well if you like, but it's perfectly fine to use a bowl, and so that's what we're going to do. So the first thing that you need is 1/4 cup of warm water along with 2 packets of yeast. And if you are working from a huge big container of yeast, that's equivalent to 4 1/2 teaspoons. And then we're going to go ahead and put in 1 tablespoon of sugar, and we're going to just sort of stir that around a little bit and let it start to proof. Yeah, we're going to stir it. Well, I just kind of shook it, but it'll be fine. So warm water, yeast, and sugar. It's going to allow some bubbling and growing to happen. So just set that aside for about 3 minutes and get your other ingredients ready. So while we're waiting, I just wanted to show you this cookbook that I found this recipe in, Joanna Gaines' Magnolia Table Cookbook. I have made numerous things from this book and have loved every single one of them. So the one in here called Cinnamon Squares is where I'm getting the recipe for today. All right, so the next thing that you're going to need is some warm butter, melted butter that's cooled down. So go ahead and do that now. Melt your butter and let it start cooling so that you can add it to your yeast mixture in a little bit and not kill the yeast. Then you're also going to need 2 eggs. I have 2 eggs in here. Go ahead and beat them up ahead of time so that they're already mixed. And then you're also going to want to warm up some milk. We're going to need 1 1/4 cups of warm milk. So as you can see, our yeast has proofed. It's a little bit foamy and a little bubbly. And so now we're going to add the rest of our ingredients that we already prepped. All right, so here we have 1 stick of melted butter that has cooled down. So I'm going to add that in. All right, Susanna, you can stir over here. Here's your vanilla. There you go. We're not using vanilla, just a heads up. All right, and we're going to put in 2 eggs that are beaten. The next thing that we're going to do is add in our warm milk. This is 1 1/4 cups of warm milk.
Yay!
1 teaspoon of salt. And then a little more sugar. So we're going to add in 2 cups of sugar. We're going to take 1 tablespoon out of our 2 cups because we already used 1 tablespoon when we added it to the yeast. All right, so now you're gently going to stir this mixture around with this spoon until it's well combined. Can you stir on here? Can you just stir your plate? What are you making over there, Susanna? What are you making? Stir this one right here.
No.
Mommy will let you stir my bowl in just a minute, okay? All right, go ahead and let's put this one down. You can use this spoon. Ready? You stir it. Good job. Mommy help you? All right, so once that's stirred, you're gonna add your flour. We are gonna be using 6 cups of all-purpose flour, and it's gonna get pretty thick. That's all right. Okay.
The flower. Okay? Daddy? At the end. Okay?
All right, can you count with me? 1,
2, 3,
2,
Whoa!
6.
6.
All right, 6 cups of flour. Get our spoon and we're gonna stir this up again, okay? Okay, you can have a turn.
Here we are, guys.
Here we are.
Then put up and some more
All right, so now that I've got a dough that's come together, I'm gonna go ahead and put some softened butter on the top, just around the sides of the bowl a little bit, while it sits to rise. It's gonna rise for about an hour, roughly. I'm just gonna spread this around with my hands. It's room temperature softened butter. And we're gonna cover this, let it rise for about an hour and come back and check on it, and we should have a nice soft dough to use for our cinnamon squares. See you in a bit. So now we're going to go ahead and make up our filling mixture while the dough finishes off its rising. And I'm going to go ahead and use my food processor. If you've got one, it would be really handy to use for this. You're going to need to chop up some nuts. So this is useful for that. If you have a little manual nut chopper, go ahead and use that. But this is what I'm using today. So I'm going to put 2 cups of pecans into my food processor, and we're going to let them get all chopped up. So let me go ahead and start with that. And now I'm going to add 2 sticks of cold butter. You want to use cold butter because it's going to create something like a paste when you're done mixing everything up. So let's go ahead and put the butter in. Now we're adding 2 cups of light brown sugar. This is going to be a really full food processor. You can always do this in batches if you need to, or if you have a smaller food processor, but I think this is going to work with mine. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And let's mix it up. I'm just going to scrape the sides, make sure that there's nothing sticking, and mix it a little more. All right, we have a beautiful pasty consistency, and we're going to go ahead and set this aside while we roll out our dough. So our dough is risen, and I took it out of the bowl, put it on a floured work surface, and I'm just going to knead it just a little bit to make sure it's not too sticky. And now it's about time to roll it out. You're going to want to roll this into a large rectangle about 16 inches by 24 inches. This is a really soft dough to work with, just so you know. It's pretty malleable. All right, that is about 16 inches by 24 inches. Just want to get my corners stretched out a little bit. Don't be afraid to use your hands here. Oh, this is going to be so delicious, I can already tell. Now we're going to take our filling paste that we made up, and we're going to put 2/3 of the paste on this dough and spread it over the entire surface. All right, so we've spread the entire surface of our dough, and now what we're going to do is fold it in half. We're going to take the short side and fold it over to meet the other side. All right, so here we go. I'm just trying to get my hands under this dough without ripping a hole in it. And there we go. Flip it on top. Just kind of press it down gently. Make sure your sides are all matched up nicely. Kind of squish it together a little bit. And you should have a rectangle here that is roughly half the size of the last one. We're going to have something akin to about 14 by 16 inches. So press that down nicely. And then get the rest of your filling paste. All right, so we're going to spread this all over the top, same as last time. All right, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half yet again. Short side over on top to the other short side, just like that. Try to square it up a little bit, smush it down, and you're going to want to have a rectangle that's about roughly 12 by 18 inches. So you're going to want to kind of smush it with your hands a little. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into 24 squares. So you're going to want to use a sharp chef's knife for this and go ahead and get it sliced. All right, so my squares aren't perfect, but you get the idea. They're still going to bake up really delicious. So go ahead and make sure that your oven is preheated. I should have mentioned that sooner. You want your oven preheated to 350 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and let this rest for a second. Get out a baking sheet and put some parchment paper on it. Might have been a little big, but that's okay. And we're going to go ahead and take our squares and we're going to set them in the pan, touching each other, but not super squished. So you'll see what I mean once I start setting them in here. They're going to expand a little bit while they're baking, and so we want to give them room for that, but we also want them to stay fairly close to each other. So as you can see, I have all of my cinnamon squares in my pan. I'm going to go ahead and make a quick egg wash. 1 egg, gently beaten, and then we'll just brush it over the top of these squares. Just helps create a little bit of a golden crust while it bakes. And then we will have a delicious treat on our hands. I'm going to go ahead and pop these in my 350 degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. Well, I just pulled these cinnamon squares out of the oven. They're really hot. They're kind of crazy huge, as you can see, but they smell amazing. There's all this delicious cinnamon layering going on. So I really hope that you have a chance to make these yourself and enjoy them. The recipe link will be in the description below this video, so you can go ahead and find the recipe. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That's just a way to get notifications when there's new videos coming out and you can stay up to date. Anyway, all the business talk aside, let's go ahead and take a look at how awesome these are. You can see all the layers of cinnamon and sugar in here, and they are warm and hot, and there's a hand that wants to take one, so I'll go ahead and pass it off. I'm sure that you could make some kind of a drizzle glaze to go on top if you wanted to, but honestly, I don't think you need it. There's loads of sugar and butter and delicious goodness in every yummy layer. Enjoy!